Om, 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 Om Ganganapataye Namaha, Om Gungurabhyo Namaha, Om Aim Saraswatyay Namaha, Om Namo Bhagavate Shivanandaya, Om Namo Bhagavate Vishnu Devanandaya, Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Namah Shivaya, good evening.
Om Namah Shivaya. So those of you that don't know me, my name is Brett Popper. I'm a yoga teacher, and up until about 3 years ago, I was also the publisher of an online magazine, and the editor is here too, Cynthia Kling, and Katie Johansson, who also worked with us in marketing and is also here. And I met Prem through that work with Yoga City NYC. And we held these panel discussions where we interviewed senior teachers from around New York. And about now 7.5 years ago, we held our first one, and Prem was on the panel. And the panel discussion was about the guru-disciple relationship and how that relationship developed. And Prem had said that, now, it used to be that you would study with your teacher for 12 years and you would study very intensely. And now it seems that you study for 4 weeks and all of a sudden, this person is now your big teacher. And he said something that was really wonderful in that talk, that we should all have sacredness and humility in our learning and as teachers ourselves. And that really hit home for me. And then Cynthia and I kind of scoped him out when he was at the Shivananda organization to hear a couple of talks that he gave then. And Prem had taught for many, many years within the Shivananda organization and did their teacher trainings and worked at various ashrams around the world. And when he left there, he began giving lessons on a variety of different things. And I had for a long time wanted to take Sanskrit, and I became a student. And now I think about 4 years, I've been 3 or 4 years, I've been your student in Sanskrit. And Katie and I also take a course in mantras with Prem, and also I attend lectures in yogic philosophy. So Prem has really become my teacher, and I feel that we have this kind of old-fashioned relationship, maybe that 12-year kind of relationship as opposed to the 4-week relationship. So I'm very grateful for that. And so we were talking about what kinds of things we could offer people, especially during this period of time. And the topic that we came up with was this idea of Sankalpa. So many times teachers will start classes and they'll say, have an intention and have an intention for your practice. And I, quite frankly, never really understood what that meant. Like, what does that exactly mean? What is a Sankalpa? And where does that idea even come from? And how do you set one and all of those things? And I thought that this was an incredible time to think about intention. Not only intention for our practice as we practice and we're kind of sheltered away and we're in our own little kind of caves here, but also our intention for what happens when we go back out into the world. Like, what kind of world do we want to see made, and what things do we want to see happen? And I thought, wow, setting an intention is a really important thing right now, but I still don't know what it really means, and I still don't know how to do that, and I still don't know how my practice revolves around that. So it's a very ancient concept. It's not a new concept at all. It's not something that like a young yoga teacher came up with, but it's not always as simple as sometimes it's communicated in a class. So I thought that it would be great to let Prem talk about that. He, as I said before, he's a long time devotee of Swami Shivananda, and he's taught for that organization for a long, long time. And he teaches all of these other wonderful things. And he's also a kirtan musician and plays a mean guitar. So he brings a lot of humanity to his teaching, a lot of contemporary thought to his teaching. And we should just kind of get into it. So what is a sankalpa? And you know, kind of why is it important right now? I'm going to give you that first one.
First of all, I want to thank you, Brett, for introducing me to this wonderful group of people. It is truly an honor to know you and to know some of these people, and to have actually, you know, together explored all these wonderful aspects of spirituality. There's such an ocean there. As my teacher would say, after all these years, you know, 25, 30, 35, 40 years, he will say, what you know now is this much in a fist, and what you don't know is this much. And I said, okay, well, it's time for Sankalpa then to increase our knowledge. First of all, I want to say that from special relationships like this come special also creative moments. And I think that the Sankalpa may be just the beginning of something that we all need. It is really not so much about me or Brad telling you what Sankalpa is, but it's really rather exploring the very concept and the practices, and then maybe to make a commitment and think of how we can monitor it. And that's basically the foundation of this idea. I first want to mention that we, as you know, have entered the very critical times for humanity, and it's more in a sense of being critical in a sense of a change of a paradigm, the way we think, the way we have actually contributed to creating a reality that we're part of. And I know that many people are frightened by it, and many people think, oh my God, what happened to my world? It seems as if some magic, you know, wand is touched on everybody and turned them into, you know, quite a worrisome people. I would say that to, as an introduction to Sankalpa, is to think of it as a moment of possibilities, as something that you can really consider as a precious gift given, because this kind of gifts are not given unless we stay put. And this is exactly what is happening. And I know this will lift and we need not worry about that, but still there's a question of how far we're able and ready to change as the times move on. Because obviously this is a lesson and a warning that comes from nature. And the question is, are we really able to read the signs and the message of nature, or are we going to ignore it as a humanity? I'm not just talking about spiritual people. And so if we do mind her language and her love also in all of this, we would be creating a new civilization. So the creation of a new civilization begins with each one of us, and it really takes place in the form of these sankalpas or intentions that we're going to discuss in a few minutes. As an introduction, I was thinking to maybe bring you back to the very concept of spiritual life. A spiritual life is nothing but a series of sankalpas or intentions or decisions that we make, and it is simply a process. Spiritual life is that kind of a process which relates us to the infinite, meaning that spiritual life is that by which we are related to the infinite. We relate to it and we will realize the infinite. The infinite nature within us is the infinite nature in the whole creation. And so within us, there's a power, and that power is such that we can either open to, or we may decide to close to. The power is nothing but a divine inflow or influx that comes to us in the form of inspiration, in the form of a desire to lead a spiritual life, to comprehend the depth and the meaning of this life, and to, of course, live for one another and to help one another. So spiritual life, of course, is not exclusive life as such. Only for the greatest masters they go, and they may need time to spend in caves and everything, everywhere like that. But we are, we are, we are in the battlefield of the Bhagavad Gita. So we are in the life itself, and so, as the Bhagavad Gita says, to lead a spiritual life is to really make it into what we call a dharma kshetra, which is the field of proper activity, selfless activity. And also, I would add now the activity in the spirit of Sankalpa, meaning making your activities into real yoga practice. And when I say yoga practice, I don't just mean asanas or postures and breathing. I mean the way whereby your life in itself becomes a manifestation of yoga. This is the greatest achievement in the life of any one of us. So we have the power within us to create the life any way we want. The question now is, are we aware of it? Are we using that power? And of course, majority of people worry about, the five standard things. It could be the money, and it could be whatever else, the friends, and where they're going to go on a vacation, what they're going to do. But really, some important questions which we may start to think of immediately now, as we're still within this kind of confinement at home for most of us. What is the best way to live? And what is the best way to utilize our time, and what are the best ways to understand our mind? So with these kind of questions, we can begin the exploration of the subject of Sankalpa. So if we as human beings exist only to pass through the time, then we can also say that we do not exist at all. We don't live. So the most unique feature of human life is that we have the ability, first of all, to have a clear perception and intelligent comprehension of the goal of life. We are able to understand the purpose why we're here. And also, we have the capacity to accomplish our highest goal, or the highest goal of all beings, which is self-realization or enlightenment. So we have the capacity, we have a power or effort in a sense. We can make a sustained effort towards that attainment, and this is what makes us so special. This is, in my way, all a very big part of what we may call now a sankalpa, looking at as a large picture. So, learning about how to use sankalpas, and we call them here, define them as pure intentions, although I will give some more definitions of it, is to really have a new beginning of life. In fact, there is nothing better in life but to kind of think of your life as if you were starting it from the very beginning. Like the moment you wake up in the morning, it's a new day. And if there were difficult moments in your day, and you failed in certain ways, or people annoyed you in a certain ways, those are all opportunities for new sankalpas to arise, decisions and everything. What happens is that for majority of us, if things don't go our way, we tend to basically feel as if something is, something is just upset us, and then we think, okay, I don't have choices now. We don't think that way, but it appears as if the choice is gone, and I'm trapped in my negative emotions. I'm trapped in my memories. I'm trapped in my feelings of being hurt and all this. So the Sankalpa is the way to help us out of it, and we will define it in a minute. So the spiritual knowledge is such that is valuable only when it's applicable, meaning when we can use it and also when we can benefit from it. So the question now, before we start thinking of what sankalpas we should make and how we should live, is to really think, where do we stand right now at this very moment? Um, because this time, especially this coronavirus, is the time where we can make a proper and a deep study of our own lives. we don't need to think, oh, it's other people who did this and other people who did that. We are the people. We are all making contributions to an overall vibration of the world, an overall, of course, reality of the world as we perceive it at any given moment. And although our mind is problematic at times, I like to say that the mind may be now a great problem. It's ruled over by different emotions. And as I said, we're set in different ways of thinking. The same mind, when it's trained through a system of sankalpas, it can become a really your friend, and it can become the solution to the problems that you have right now. Of course, this is not quite the same mind. There are two aspects to our mind. One is called lower, one is called higher mind. The lower mind is the one that belongs to the instinctive realm of our life, which we share with animals. This is like the one part of the mind that evolutionary had to become what it is in order to protect the life itself. So there you will find all the negative emotions, in a sense that those things, those forces that we may call them emotions that belong to the lower mind, were actually necessary for protection of life. However, they become an obstacle when we want to evolve further. So, let's say when an animal is frightened, it will hit back, it will bite back. But imagine us now, if we are frightened by something, or somebody, says something that we don't like, we don't bite them, we don't harm them immediately like that. So it is a sometimes we do, but I think this is what we have to remember, that we have both natures within us, and then we also have a higher nature, which is obviously the mind that is what we call it, our friend, our philosopher, our better self, our higher self. It is the mind that is actually uh, in greater contact with the innermost reality, and it's that mind that sometimes is prevalent in our mind, and we think this is me. And then all of a sudden, you know, or maybe a few hours later, we see that the mind changed into an angry mind, and a, greedy mind, or any kind of a mind. So knowing that, we set the sankalpas to direct us towards the development of what we call a sattva guna. And so we are basically concentrating on greater and greater lengths of awareness, or maintaining the awareness, or mindfulness, if you like, with a specific goal in mind, in which we're going to see how we do this in a few seconds. So one reminder here is just to um, say that we all need a teacher in life, or we need teachers. Sometimes one teacher may not be able to guide us in every realm of mastery, or what we need to do. But in a spiritual sense, of course, if there is such a master that can take us beyond the body and mind, that's wonderful, but it's a very rare opportunity. So we're kind of left on our own, and because of that, and left to the vicissitudes of the mind, meaning its changeability, what is important to do is, along with making these intentions, along with setting up your little vows, is what we need to do is to have a system of monitoring it. And that little, we call it a diary, or you can call it a journal, any way you like, that is your teacher. For the time being, that is the mirror of everything you do or you don't do. And it's also your friend. So you're not going to keep that journal in order to feel worse about yourself. In any case, it's just, as Cuomo said today, facts, 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 so I like that. So in a way, in spiritual life, we have to deal with facts. The power of imagination is such, you can turn the mind in any direction we want, and usually it's in a direction of lower mind. So as I said, even though we need a teacher, no teacher can do the work that we have to do. Now, the teacher that is often talked about in spiritual life is somebody who is, by very presence, by his or her very presence, is able to influence the mind of a student to such a degree that that teacher acts as a mirror. Of course, everybody you live with is also a teacher. In some ways, each person is a mirror of what you are at, your good qualities and your bad qualities. Of course, you would like only good qualities to be perceived in the mirror, but it's not always the case. So nobody can do this work for us. Nobody can even eat for us or dream for us. We know that. So this is what the essence of spiritual life is truly a self-reliance. And the beauty of Sankalpa is that you're the doer and the maker of your life any way you want. So you not need to depend on anybody else, and other people also do not know you. I don't know if you realize that, but other people only have a notion of you, or they have their own projection about you that is based on obviously what they like in you, what they don't like in you. But it is only you who know yourself the best. And since you live with yourself 24 hours a day, it's you have a pretty clear understanding what you need to work on and what potential sankalpas you could be actually creating on the basis of it. So the guidance, of course, in spiritual life will come. There's no doubt, and it comes even through what we may call insentient beings, such as books and things like that. So you can get uh, the inspiration from many different directions and take it. The light will come, the inspiration will come, the ideas will come. The practices will be suggested in many of these books and the meetings and satsangs like this. But the effort has to be ours. Yeah, this is the what we call in Sanskrit purushartha, self-effort, which we know, of course, everything that we live in the materialistic life here, even in the West, everything we've accomplished is based on self-effort. So now the same thing, when we get to spiritual life, we think somebody else will do the work for us. So we go to the teacher and we say, could you meditate for us? Did you go to yoga class? Can you do the headstand for me, please? And then if they do the headstand, I feel the benefits. Sometimes I feel that way when I teach a class. I see people doing things and I'm so with them. I'm sure all of you who teachers, you feel the same thing. And then what happens, after about half an hour, I feel energized myself. And I said, well, this is a very good way of getting the benefit of the practice without doing any. But I'm saying that in spiritual life, we have to be more focused and we need to draw inspiration, as I said, from all directions. But keep your effort. Effort is yours, and nothing can ever substitute for it. Now, coming back to one more point, this is that it is not really the world. Again, um, um, it's not what the world says or has to say about us that really matters. It is not what others think or say in public meetings, in welcome addresses, in any way. It is, they may say, oh, he's such a wonderful yogi, she is such a great thing, and this and that. And yet they may not see neither our strengths nor our weaknesses in a way that we know them. So here in the spiritual life, our opinion, our own opinion about ourselves is what matters the most. Knowing that, it will create a wonderful foundation for our sankalpa work. Now, samskara is also there. So before you make sankalpas in a direction of your growth, these are perhaps more internal practices, but we will also set some for our times now. So you may want to do a gentle evaluation of where you stand, and that evaluation of yourself could be done with a piece of paper. You can write down in an impartial, in a frank way, obviously compassionate and kind way. What is it that you think you should work on? What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? And so here, you obviously, for some people, they may not be as easy, because what's really needed when you're working with the mind being so elusive, you need to have a little clarity. And if you don't have a clarity, it will come if you apply the practices of I would say, a combo here of Sankalpa plus awareness, which is really connected. And so I would say that this is the way to start. Another important thing is at the time. as we know now, we've seen what the time is in this coronavirus time. The same 24 hours we all share, given to everyone, given to, to a person, a man, a woman, a dog, donkey, anybody. So time is too precious to be wasted. And a part of the Sankalpa making is to preserve your mental energy and to save your waste of time, which sometimes is very subtle and at other times is very obvious. And you have to be very clear on where you want your time to go. And no power in this earth can really ever recall the time. So we know that. Now, another problem, of course, that happens with this contemplation of time is that as you get older, as you realize how much work lies ahead of you in mastering your meditation, your pranayama, your virtues, your sankalpas, we're all faced with an ever lessening quantum of time to finish what we're meant to finish. So for that reason, I had to bring a little bit of this, not to sound like an old daddy or something, but just to bring up a little bit the awareness of time wasting. Because even now, when people actually may have some time, they actually don't know what to do with it. And so we will address this issue before addressing the sankalpa itself. So in nature, it's like this. You have to start from where you are, and the nature accepts you where you are. You need not be any different person or nothing more glorious, more this and that. These are all fantasies. Sometimes we, unfortunately, take them on because we begin our life like being conditioned that we need to be ideal people all the time. And we haven't even gone through a process. We don't even know what the training is involved in making somebody an ideal, a perfect person. Of course, there isn't such a thing as a perfect and ideal person, but we still can do it. And because of the pressure to be always better and more shiny and this and that, we cease to be ourselves. So part of the working with our mind is to also recognize where we are at a given moment and be okay with that. Sometimes your mind, it's a little down, so you can think, okay, I can do these practices and everything, but you don't have to feel guilty for that. So the nature is such that it makes no demand on you. So you can start from where you are, and this will make your practice of sankalpa making so much more fun. If the sankalpa it becomes like a whip that says, whoa, you got to do better, you got to concentrate all the time. Suppose you start a yoga class with your sankalpa and by the middle of it you're irritated because you notice that your mind has wandered at least 500 times in different directions, thinking about the bananas in the next movie and this and that, and then occasionally coming back to forward bend, something like that. It becomes a stressful situation. I believe in nisarga path, which is called, nisarga means natural path, with some obviously discipline development, which is obviously a constraint, and sankalpa making is a form of a constraint that you make, otherwise your mind will wander in all kinds of directions. So this is now just an invitation that when you work with yourself, put more love into it. We're pretty good analysis, right? But we're not quite good at self-acceptance and you know starting again. So what is sankalpa? Finally the question comes, and the answer should come too. Sankalpa is a Sanskrit word, we know that, and it has many, many wonderful meanings. One of the meanings is in Sanskrit we say samyak kalpate iti sankalpa, meaning that which is well or properly thought of or imagined, that is sankalpa. So when we squeeze that word samyak and sankalpa, kalpate, sorry, kalpana means imagination usually, but it also can mean thinking. So we get something like this. The meaning of Sankalpa is thought, number one. Next one comes intention. something that is generated through the power of your thought or imagination, that is Sankalpa. Um, a Sankalpa means an idea also, or a conception formed within one's heart or mind. Other definitions of sankalpas are related to more a volitional kind of activity. So will, here's more volition. It's not really quite the will, but we will come to it when we get to write the best definition. Desire. Also, sankalpa means desire. Uh, the sankalpa, in specific senses, we wanted it tonight to sound, means a declaration of purpose, or stating an intention, stating a purpose of our involvement with a particular activity in this sense. And it can mean other things too, but this is usually what people mean by when they say Meko Sankalpa. If Sankalpa in a yogic language, if it's not a declaration of intention or purpose, then it's used in a more negative sense. It means simply the binding power of thought or imagination. You know, like you let your mind think things and then it creates its reality. And Swami Shivananda says nicely that, you know, the Sankalpa itself, not in this context that we're going to be discussing, but in a yogic sense as thought, means it's the cause of bondage. However, tonight, at this wonderful time, we'll take the Sankalpa to mean mainly a spiritual intention, something that is generated, some objective that is generated in the form of thought, an idea, with the help of imagination. So, declaration, that's the kind of a right word, stating a purpose, stating an intention. So, how do we create an intention? And what is really Sankalpa and what is the process behind it? That was one of the questions Brett had for me. Wonderful. See, an intention is a form of a small vow, right? In fact, we could say that in Sankalpa is an exercise in will, in creating a greater willpower. So, thinking of the vows, the best way perhaps to define them is there are intentions, and there are the deep intentions that we sow them, like we will sow some kind of a seeds in the ground, and what happens is that although we may live these vows within a certain period of time, or let's say during the class or in any kind of a way, we may also want to have this, we may live this sankalpa out somehow also outside. So vows are nothing but energies, right? So they're actually aspiration that are in the form of energies or in the form of thought power. And so their latitude is greater than that of a normal thought. Because when you make an intention, you also put the feeling into it. This is the idea. If we just say a sankalpa or an intention, just I'm taking, a sankalpa today. I'm making a sankalpa to be aware of my breath and have no feelings. Boring. After some time, is going to go. You have to make statements, if possible, with some emotion. And if you build the emotion, it may not happen immediately, but if you uh, embed that sankalpa with some weight of feeling and emotion, if you really feel like this is important and this is the truth of this particular moment or this particular period of time, that I'm taking this vow or this deep intention for, then it will be there more of a force, because then the seed which is really nothing but sankalpa, is just a seed that is um, put in your mind, becomes alive, and it's watered by your constant practice. And when you say a seed goes into the subconscious mind and it draws the powers of previous experiences, which it comes from samskaras, and also it can connect with various kind of influences that may not be even within this physical world, but the subconscious mind has that power. So for that reason, a sankalpa is not an ordinary thought, it's not an ordinary wish. It is really a statement that comes from the bottom of your heart or your soul. It usually represents a true need of that moment, and it represents something that I want to be living this for the next 45 minutes or whatever the time is. So in a way, these sankalpas, these vows, continue to exist even within the subconscious mind. Even when you're asleep, they operate. This is the beauty of samskaras. It's like, when you take some vows in your life like this, you're also there, they're always there. So they're larger than even this life that is limited to the physical body, because they may continue even into the next lifetime. I'm not suggesting going to the next lifetime, but if it happens, this is what you do. You take your sankalpas with you. So these little sankalpas, or not little, sorry, the sankalpas, or I call them the little vows, although they can be deep vows, depending again for how long we want to take them, what kind of practices are they. So they basically become endless sources of inspiration. And you will find that among yoga people, they tend to have sankalpa for different times. So yes, a sankalpa can be varied or can be used a single sankalpa for a long time. So I will explain this in a second. So sankalpa is a little different from the goals, right? And in a sense, the goals are kind of more limited than sankalpas, because the goal is just a certain thing. But here, the goals can be met, you can say. But the practice of sankalpas is like with vows; it's never exhausted, right? I mean, there's an endless possibility of how you can practice with them. They're almost like unfulfillable, because even though I want to repeat my mantra, when is it going to happen, when the mantra is just going to be going through my mind without me even needing to make any effort. There could be like references to this kind of practices too. Although please remember that there is a variety of practices that we can consider under Sankalpa. So um, when you have a Sankalpa, what happens is it propels your willpower. It also organizes your mind in a certain way. And what happens is that this Sankalpa has a power to shape all your desires and all your actions around. So um, now, for example, when you make up a vow, you take up a sankalpa, you make a declaration of intention, you also have to be aware that you'll be failing in pursuing, maintaining that kind of an awareness for a long time. For example, sometimes you say, I'm making a sankalpa today to be completely truthful for 1 week, completely. And then, of course, in a single day, you run into some difficulties. You say, how am I going to say this? Should I say it? Not say it? Better be silent. I'll be wiser, like that. God knows what can come to our mind. So basically, we just simply have to understand it is as much as we may be kind and truthful and everything, there will be moments where we won't be. So, and there are also moments when we forget our sankalpas altogether. So in that case, you have to do what's called naturally a renewal of vows or removal of sankalpas. And this is the best thing. No cause for despair at all. So basically, the next thing that we should do is try to figure out what the Sankalpa is about as a process. So Sankalpa is about focusing a mental energy towards a specific goal, or I would say also towards simply a maintenance of awareness, or mindfulness in relation to a particular, either image. Let's say I can think of Jesus, I can think of somebody like that, or mantra, or movement of my body, or maybe I have a sankalpa to just keep silent completely. So when I'm doing the asanas, I try to learn to read the language of my body. So when that happens, all those voices to say, oh, well, I'm stiff and I'm not as good as this person next to me, and I'm, underweight, overweight, whatever it is, that we think of our bodies with an ego kind of thing. We have to leave that ego outside in the process of sankalpa if it's practiced in this sense, where we are, trying to maintain awareness. I find this sankalpa very powerful. Just a simple silence. When you maintain a silence, then the life speaks. When we speak, life is kind of quiet. It has nothing to teach us. And then what happens in a single moment of the silence, you find a flood of life information coming at you. Like say when you do pranayama and you do asanas or you do things like this, these are wonderful uh, foundational practice is good, because your body is not just still. That's a hard one, right? So you're moving your body a little bit, so it allows for that kind of a flexible concentration. So if a teacher says, okay, lift your right leg, you don't feel like, okay, oh my God, I'm losing my sankalpa here. You, you're simply being just, for a moment you go off and you come back. So this is the beauty of yoga class and asana class. In fact, you know, I always believe that yoga class with other people is more effective than the class on our own. I mean, we have to practice on our own, and you will have sometimes very deep experiences. But what happens is the teacher voice, it kind of nails it down. You have to focus on what the teacher is telling you, and you have to follow your sankalpa. Whereas maybe if you do it by yourself and you think, oh, I really like to have a piece of chocolate, you may go and get tempted and get a piece of chocolate. You can't do it in a yoga class. For now, there may be some classes that serve chocolate as you're doing good asana. They give it to you to kind of encourage you further. But basically, um, Sankalpa is very much also like a mild concentration exercise. So, as I said, naturally our mind will wander from time to time. And so the recognition that the mind has wandered away from the object is a part of concentration process. It's a part of Sankalpa process. So it is not a negative. It's rather the part of it. For example, let's say I should be telling truth, right? That's my sankalpa in a relationship, or, just in general. And now I catch myself that I told a lie. So that telling a lie is a part of the process of telling the truth. You get it? Because we're not exactly there yet. So we're using this lacks lack of awareness, and maybe lacks in plural, for our own benefit, to bring us back to where we're supposed to be. So this is the failing, what we may call under the inverted comma here, is nothing but the step towards establishing your focus and also increasing your focus as a part of your sankalpa making. See, people make, at this point, I'm not distinguishing much between a sankalpa and a vow, because they're really one and the same thing. You can take a vow for 1 hour, or you can take a vow for life, or you can take, sankalpa for now. The difference is just that the sankalpa in itself becomes a statutory declaration. It's like, I am doing this, that's it. And with the vows we do the same thing, but you could say that the part of the vow would be perhaps sankalpa first. You're making some statement and then you practice. So the important thing here is that, because they are so similar, that I would say that they're the same, the statement of something what you're going to do has to be followed by practice anyway. So we may keep it like that. Vow and sankalpa is just one and the same. So, for example, Sankalpas remind us of our commitments. Um, so, for example, you say Sankalpas sometimes at important moments in your life. You may have heard of, Egyptians and many kinds of, yogis, tantrikas, the people who do different rituals, pujaris, all these people. They say certain Sankalpas. In the West, you have also white mags will say something 3 times. Yeah, during the spiritual initiations, we also bring up some sankalpas. We say, at this given time, and this time in Kali Yuga, in this particular month, I perform this particular practice, or I take the vows that I'm going to do this and this and that. Yeah. So you can have, again, either looking at, you can make a list of the sankalpas you would like to maybe experiment with, you know. So you could have, for example, sankalpas when I'm doing asanas, a particular thing I want to concentrate on. And so this kind of this kind of practice could be of sankalpa can be applied also to any virtues, any study. Don't people pronounce a sankalpa, declare sankalpa when they're getting married, for example? I have not heard yet of the when they separate, but I know when they marry, they say we're going to live together until we part, or something like that. Until we party together. Something I heard this, something like that. Not sure. Okay, so how to make the sankalpa? Practically speaking, I would say the morning is the most important time. You may think about possible sankalpas anytime during the day, but the morning has the power of truth in it, and your mind is the most suggestive. It's the clearest, empty of all impressions from previous day. Um, Especially Brahma Muhurta, this is the time, 48 minutes before the sunrise, or 2 minutes before the sun, sorry, 2 hours before the sunrise. In China, all people, when they make decisions, this is in the scriptures, they must do it at the earliest, before the sun rises, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, like that. That's when they make the most important decisions in their life for something they have to do. So my suggestion would be like this: if you're stating a sankalpa, is to light a candle and an incense, and in front of your deities or nature picture, whatever it is, you state your sankalpa in a very clear language, and say it at least 3 times. It is said that all things are said 3 times. They resonate in 3 worlds: physical, astral, and causal, or spiritual, whatever you want to call it. You can divide it: physical, astral, and causal world, um, heaven, interregion, and hell's, well, not hell, sorry, earth, like that. So the 3 regions, 3 times, for things to resonate as truth, they're said usually 3 times. So you can say this with a nice kind of firm yet warm voice, and just say like this: I commit to doing this particular practice, and sorry, today, on this day, I commit to doing this particular practice for this many minutes. Or you can say, today on this day, as a part of my asana practice, I make a sankalpa to observe my breath, and I will, then I will do whatever I can to not let my mind interfere with this process of learning. But, these things will not naturally happen. So, in order to practice Sankalpa, perhaps I should have said this before, it might be good to think of the benefits of it. What is the benefit of having an intention? So, we've already mentioned a few of them. Um, I think the Sankalpa is a wonderful way of changing, transforming our minds and our hearts. And it is a perfect way to diffuse the general scatteredness that people suffer from. Their minds are like in so many directions. We have so much of an unprocessed uh, material, meaning a mental material that comes in the form of sounds, different kinds of sensory perceptions, thoughts, all mingled together. We do not know what comes in, what comes out. So this way, when we focus our minds in with a form of Sankalpa, we reduce that scatteredness of the mind and reduce our, our getting lost in our thoughts. So it prevents us from castle building, as they say. And of course, as I said before, an unnecessary mental waste of mental energy. So that's kind of a way to do it. And now we need to have a way how we're going to chart our progress. So what kind of a thing should we do? Perhaps it might be the best idea to create some kind of a journal, like an Excel sheet or something like this, where you would post your, you can either have a Sankalpa for the week, and then you can change it also, it doesn't really matter. But if you're doing it, it's just to kind of journal a little bit and to write down at what moments you felt like the real benefit of the sankalpa, and if what were the thoughts of that were preventing you from being able to maintain it. So like this, to have that kind of a focus would be a very good idea. Now you can keep, as I said, long-term and short-term sankalpas. There's no worry about this, but what I would suggest also, when you're working with sankalpas, and try to also train your mind to think in abstract ways. For example, if we're talking about the virtues such as kindness, right? So we need to think of what is kindness, how should it be practiced, under what circumstances, and what disadvantages are if we do not practice it. So all these things are there um, just to initiate this process of thinking in order to make your process of sankalpa making better. And then, of course, journaling that, maybe after a week, you look at it and you say, okay, I was succeeding here, and I was, I need to do more work there. And maybe my intention would be here to say that the best thing is not to share your sankalpa with anybody. Um, you see, sankalpa is your secret, and it's a good secret. The problem in this world, and if you want to do something, whether good or bad, if you announce it, all of a sudden you awaken the sleepy forces all around the world, all around the universe. They run in your direction to most likely prevent you when you do some, when you want to do something like that. So it is best to um, it is an interesting thing, but if you make up your mind and you say to everybody, I'm not going to eat this, and I'm going to do that, all of a sudden you'll find many obstacles coming your way, because different beings hear this and the different beings react to it. So the best thing would be to think of it as your own secret. So it is better unannounced if possible. So I would say, after some time you've done your sankalpa work, you can share it with others. So that's where I think you can be of help to somebody, or you can simply encourage them to do the same. If you're doing an experimental class, like let's say in a yoga class, you say, okay, please make up your sankalpa. Then some people may feel comfortable sharing it, what they concentrated on. Some people may not. In those environments, it's okay to share your sankalpa, because also you're among the, like-minded people. Nobody will misunderstand you. Nobody will make fun of you. So let's say you can make up a sankalpa like this: during this class, I will think of nothing but bananas. you know no, I will not think of the bananas. I will think of whatever else, and then you will be thinking of the bananas. So people ask you, okay, what was your sankalpa? You can make some fun like this, but I'm saying that you can definitely share this small exercises like this. But the bigger sankalpas, your transformative commitments, these are total silence. you will find that all great initiations of spiritual masters and students are all done in secrecy. Because if it's witnessed by too many people that are not on the same level of vibration, or if it's done in a way that they can be open to some kind of a criticism like this, it may weaken the power of Sankalpa. For example, you tell people, I would like to stop eating sweets this week, right? That's my favorite one. So then you get people laughing and you say, oh my God, how many times you've already said this, right? And immediately your power of commitment is basically diminished. See, in a regular life, some sankalpas are like this. When you're getting married, you also have a ring. And that ring is the reminder of your sankalpa. So for that purpose, you may want to do something like this. When you take a sankalpa of telling the truth or whatever else you want to do, you may tie something around your finger or wear a specific mala, or perhaps wear a dress that will be for you associated with that particular vow commitment. So you'll find this in businesses. Naturally, people wear the same clothing. In the yoga teacher trainings, at least in my tradition, we have yellow and white. This is like a reminder of the training. And when you're in a part of a certain training, the commitment truly uh, just uh, kind of puts a little definition around your ego consciousness and your efforts that you're going to be making. It's very helpful, you know. So that's as far as I went. So Brett, please come forward, say something, and if anybody wants to say
Well,
something.
thank you. That was terrific. I'm wondering if anybody we have time for maybe one or two questions. If anybody, you can unmute yourself if you have a question.
Yeah, I will mute you all and you unmute yourself. Yeah, go ahead, please.
Okay, so it's interesting to me because just a comment, maybe you could comment on this comment. With vows, I think I have this mentality like you make a vow, and if you don't keep it, oh, you're so bad or you're so terrible. From my conditioning somewhere. And yet, the way you described vow sankalpa, it was so soft. And, the fact that failure is just a step in it. And I really appreciated that. That's all.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Well, this is all the result of my own failings. And I realized that, if you're going to take a vow of any kind, small or big one, and you have no freedom to break it, then you're not free. And if you break it, you learn from it. And I'm not saying you take the vows in order to break them, but if you have, of course, the major vows, a different story, but we're talking here about something that, it's okay. I mean, we're all humans, and as best as we try sometimes to, accomplish some really goals for us, I mean, we fail. And not just that we fail occasionally, we fail every day. We make little vows, and then the secret of making these vows and commitments, so sankalpas, is to renew our efforts. Swami Shivananda says, if you fail once, you stand up again, you rise again. If you fail 10 times, 10 times. The beauty of growth, and this is the sankalpa. Sankalpas are simply um, an auxiliary method in organizing our mental energy, so that we use them only because we really want to try. And this is where the people's support should be there. And this people's support should be there when they're failing or about to fail, that they should come in and help. Of course, if you're sharing some kind of information like this with another person that is very dear to you, but and that you can trust. But I think with other people, you just, you do your own practice and, try to rise as best as you can. Anyone else wants to say anything?
Well, I had a question. Hi, Prem.
Hey, hi Naradi. How are you?
Hi, I'm great. How are you?
Oh, wonderful. Look at that.
Good.
You
Thank
look
you
like
so
you're
much.
flying through the sky or something.
I'm a pilot now. Yes, thank you so much for this. But I had a question to clarify. Um, are you saying that the Sankalpas can be shared with other people, or that they should not be so much?
Yeah, again, it depends. You know, I think the real, like the heavy duty sankalpas should be not shared. But if you're living with somebody who is able to comprehend what you're aiming to achieve and is supportive of what you want, you can share. We share a mantra with the person that we trust, you know, whatever. So the point is this: when you um, the best effect is that the sankalpas, when they're private, when they're deep, they should not be shared. Not because of other people. It is because the moment they're announced out loud, then different beings hear them. Even if you just think of them in your minds, so they're obstacle giver beings and they're also protective beings. So we know of them. So because of that, I say, you know, keep your business affairs quiet. But if you're working with some smaller samskaras, sorry, if you're going to share some sankalpa with another person, then you may want to share it in a way that they help you when you have difficulties, you know, taking it all the way through. That is the best thing. Then it's a different thing. It's not exactly sankalpa like I've been defining it for most of it, but it is a vow you can share with somebody. So let's say if two people are happy to keep a spiritual diary, right? Like we had it in our organization, we do that. So what happens is that we can compare them. We can say, how are you doing? How are you doing? But if another person is going to say, well, what do you do? You did only 15 minutes of asanas this week, then you're never going to share something like that. So yes, there are things that you can share. There are things also you shouldn't share. Not that, as I said, not because we we don't like people or whatever, but it is possible that sometimes, not sometimes, it is. We say like this: Shreyam si bahu vignani in Sanskrit. Whenever good decisions are made, many obstacles come up. You know, this is typical. Like if you want to do great deeds in this life, you're always going to run into obstacles. And that's simply a part of it. It's like if you want to take a really great vow in your life, you know for sure you're going to break it, at least in your mind, if not in any other way. So it's normal. So I would say separate the sankalpas of the greatest importance for your individual life that doesn't need to be known by anybody. And then maybe if you have some inspiration to share it with a partner or somebody, you know, a friend or whosoever, that's also a beautiful thing. Then you can really like strengthen each other. But sometimes you have to walk some part of the path by yourself also. Like, you know, nobody knows. Nobody knows what this person is practicing, right? I mean, you may know general things that I share with you, but I cannot tell you my deepest sadhanas, not because you don't deserve it and you're not a good friend and not, but it is something that may just also weaken my own commitment to it. Once something is said, you know, there's also a principle that uh, one should not speak about one's spiritual experiences to others. Only if that's your teacher or somebody like this, because the fire, which is the part of our speech, it burns off the effect of something. So the moment you say it, you lose the power of it. This is why always the spiritual experiences are not shared. You can go to the guru only and you can say, okay, this is what I had. But that's a different story. And so there are like these little grades of things. Nothing is exactly clear cut. Yes, please. Miss Mo.
Yeah, that's Jenny Morris says.
Jenny Morris, hello.
Um, so yeah, I heard one time that like when you make a sankalpa, it's more powerful if you um, include in the circle of its influence the bigger world. Is that true?
Yes, Yes, you're right. Then again, it depends on the nature of Sankalpa. Yeah. So yes, for example, if you're getting married, you want your marriage to be witnessed by as many people as possible, like your friends and supporters and everybody, because they will mentally also contribute to your commitment, to your whatever. And those kind of things are wonderful. But if we're talking about the initiations and private things and
No, I think
no, I agree with you.
No, I was talking more about, like, say, I want a lot of wealth. That's, like, say you were to make a sankalpa, I want more wealth. But if you want more wealth because you want to share your wealth, it is more likely that the forces are going to line up with you. Do you agree?
Even then, might be better to not share it with anybody.
Well, I'm not talking about the sharing. I'm talking about how you actually make the sankalpa.
That is wonderful.
And if you include the benefit of humanity,
totally,
it's going to be.
You're right. You're right on the spot. It's exactly how it is. Yes, very true. Oh, if people will make the sankalpas like this, it would be great. We have not finished the. Maybe Brett, you want to say a few minutes?
Well, Trudy has. I know Trudy's been wanting to ask a question, so let's do that, and then I want to be respectful of people's time.
Good.
So,
and maybe just one or two Corona sankalpas.
Go ahead, Trudy.
Can I ask a question? I go through a process where I decide that things are important to me, and at least annually I go through that list and decide, why am I not doing them? And sometimes I think that they're on my list because I want to be the kind of person for whom that would be important. In other words, it's ego. It's and I'm wondering if that's in the way you think of Sankalpa. Is there ever something that someone takes on because they'd like to be the kind of person who would take that on, and then it becomes more an issue of ego?
Very good question. I'm going to ask Brett to first gives her opinion about this. We haven't heard anything from you. Then I will say.
I think that the process of saying that you want, let's say, to go back to Prem's really great example, that you want to tell the truth, and that's something that we can all agree that we would like to do, right? And we can't, it's impossible to always tell the truth. It's not impossible. The great beings can tell the truth, but it's impossible for us mere mortals to, tell the truth on a regular basis. And I think that the impulse to do that is good, even if you say, I want to be the kind of person that tells the truth. Well, you're putting that out there. Maybe it's not quite the same as committing to it and saying, I will tell the truth, but it's like I think it's almost like a first step for people. And it's not necessarily the full commitment, but it's like, I want to be that person. And that's a good enough intention. But I'm going to switch it over to Prem and let him take it from there.
This is right on the spot, as I would say. I completely agree. Swami Shivananda used to say like this: when you begin a work as a spiritual aspirant, you begin with some 95% of selfishness and about 5% of selflessness. Then gradually, as you live, you get better and better and better, and you can increase the percent. So it's the same thing, the spiritual life, whether we're serving others or we're actually trying to do something for ourselves, we cannot avoid the ego. It's going to be there. We cannot say, okay, I will want to tell the truth all the time and yet not have some kind of a sensitivity about this and some kind of ego also wanting to be that. So as Brett said, I think it's a part of the process, and not to worry really about this. And as you continue to do your practice again and again and again, you will get better and better and better. For many people, practice of asanas is like that. You know, they start the asanas with a lot of ego. They're so conscious. Ego doesn't mean that they're comparing this thing, they're better than the others. It may be completely opposite. The ego also manifests when we think, well, you know, I'm so weak, I cannot do this asana, I'm inflexible like this. So a lot of that turmoil and inner chatter that goes on is really the ego. So no problem. I said, Trudy, just go for it and make yourself who you really want to be. And even if you enjoy with it, you have a bottle of wine and celebrate, it's also good. I mean, I think that way is the best. You know, I'm a Nisarga way. I love my natural path. So anyway, maybe we should stop here, you think, Brett? Or?
I think that it's good
it's late,
to stop here. It's
right.
You can, a couple of things. So my email address is brettpopper@gmail.com. If you enjoyed this, let us know, and we can do some more of these kinds of things. I think both Prem and I would enjoy doing that.
Yep.
Also, Prem's website is prem-sadasivananda.com. So if you want to see the kinds of things that he offers, you can see that. And just let us know. We would love to do more of this kind of thing. And if it hit you as being good, let us know. And thank you all for coming. Thank you all for joining us so much.
Thank you so much, and you're a wonderful group.
Thank
and
you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Prem.
Thank you, and we will be also sending this